Now we break it down even further and give you these real types of risk, right? The actual names for them. Now, do you need to know all of these? No, you don't. Not at all. No worries. There are some that you'll need to know, and that's fine. Generally, I would know these top three for sure. So, systematic risk, uncontrollable by an organization, macroeconomic in nature, or macro, right, affects everything. These three, I would know for sure that these are all systematic risk. Yeah, I mean, these other ones are great examples. I would say these are probably more. I would know these ones. These ones, I mean, they're true, right? But I don't have them noted, or in my experience, I have not seen them really asked on the exam. But we're going to see a lot more in unsystematic risk in terms of what will be asked on the exam. Take it all in, right? Interest rate risk, the risk that interest rates will go up or down. Obviously, there's risk in that. If all of a sudden it becomes more expensive to borrow money, well, that's a concern. If market risk, this is just the risk of being in the market, that the whole market will fluctuate, and purchasing power or inflationary risk is that all of a sudden inflation happens, your money's not worth as much, and your purchasing power goes down. It goes to a lot less than what it was. All right. A good little take on this. Again, just recap. These three are important, and just generally knowing, right? It makes sense. These are all items that would affect every single business. Here we are at our unsystematic risk. Now, let's think about this. These are controllable by an organization. They're micro, meaning they affect just an industry or just a company in nature. Again, definitely know the top three. Business risk, liquidity risk, the risk that company in particular is not doing well, or they're illiquid, they're insolvent, right? Within that one micro, that one company or scale, that is going to have issues. Financial or credit risk, these are more risk involved with leverage and debt, right? The risk that a company won't be able to pay back its debts. And operational risk, right? Is the business model risky? People risk, right? Are there individuals in the C-suite, in senior management, that are making the company more risk able? Legal risk, obviously, is there a massive lawsuit or anything like that? And political risk, are we involved in a company that has a political risk involved with particular countries or certain individuals within the government? That is operational risk. Again, know these top three. Lots of good types of risk to know. Financial risk. Okay, let's dive into that a little bit more. These are other types of risk, which will be just straight up asked as multiple choice questions. And I would definitely memorize these. We know already this is a memorization heavy exam, and we're embracing it. It's going to work out well, right? It's just like you're walking into the test with a textbook. If you could do that somehow, you would pass the exam. So you have to make a mental textbook. Financial risk, it's a general category of risk that includes all of these. We'll talk about that. Just know that financial risk includes all of these risks that we're about to talk about. Interest rate risk, we mentioned it before. It is financial loss due to fluctuating interest rates, and that risk is increased with a longer duration of the security's maturity. Now, what does this mean? So generally, shorter term, this might get confusing, so I'll explain it. Generally, shorter term debt is more risky because long term debt, you can remember that like a mortgage, right? You have a lower interest rate for a mortgage. Now, I know it's collateralized, but generally short term debt, think of it like a credit card. I know that's uncollateralized, but great way to remember it is that short term debt is riskier, long term debt is less risky. However, when it comes to interest rate risk, a longer duration increases your risk, because the more time goes on, the more opportunity there are for interest rates to change. It's just as simple as that. So remember that. If it's a security that matures in a month, interest rates probably aren't going to increase in a month if it wasn't expected. Market risk. This is just the risk from the movement in the prices of stocks, interest rates, exchange rates, commodities, any fluctuations in any of these. Purchasing power risk, we saw this as well, also known as inflation risk, the risk that price levels will change and purchasing power will decrease. Again, you're concerned the government will print a bunch of money, all of a sudden your money's worth less, and now you can't buy as many assets, you can't fund your business as well. Liquidity risk, the risk that an investor's ability to sell an investment on short notice will result in significant price concessions, right? So if you have an investment, maybe you are very bullish on, let's say, Microsoft, but all of a sudden Microsoft just plummets, but in the long term that Microsoft is going to do well. But you need cash today, you're not liquid enough, you have to sell that Microsoft stock at a loss to just get what cash you can. That is liquidity risk. Lastly, we get to default risk and credit risk. It's the same thing, but default risk is from the borrower's perspective, and credit risk is from the lender's perspective. So the risk that a borrower will be unable to pay back the interest and or principal. So it's default risk if you're the borrower and you're afraid you won't be able to pay back your own debt. It's credit risk if you're afraid that those who owe you money will not be able to pay it back. Just keep in mind that is the difference here. Other risk types, just throwing these in there, just a continuation of what we saw. These are not financial risks, just other definitions to be aware of for the exam. Sovereign risk is the risk of lending to, investing in, or operating in a particular country, right? You're investing in a country, there's a government, there's a coup, there's a war, there's a government got ousted. All of a sudden, they say, hey, we are privatizing everything and taking all of these companies' assets. That's not good, and that is sovereign risk. Operational risk is the risk of loss from ineffective or failed internal processes, business systems, people, external events. So just operations are failing, unfortunately. Saw this before as a type of unsystematic risk. Event risk is the risk of an outlier event. Gosh, if I say the word risk one more time, I guess I'm going to have to say it a lot more. The risk that an outlier event, this could be a natural disaster, it could be war, it could be anything, it could be the 2008 financial crisis, that is unexpected and infrequent, will happen and have a negative impact on an entity. Detection risk, you'll see this in our audit exam as well. The risk that an auditor will not detect a material misstatement on an entity's financial statements. This is a risk as an investor, it's a risk for a company, it's a risk in all senses. And business risk, the risk associated with the unique circumstances of a particular company as they might affect the shareholder value of that company. Just love all these terms, don't you? Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.